the person who gave me this information is one LSD Pires, friend of SSA, who's from one of those families. He said, we joked that those were called liquid assets. So anyway, earlier the women did that. Then they started going to school. And all the top schools, girls' schools in Colombo, all this crowd, the old bourgeoisie, new bourgeoisie, Bandaranayakas, the Soizas, everybody went to the leading schools, and then they made judicious marriages, and even the liquor merchants themselves, they had a marriage cartel, and one liquor merchant's daughter would marry the son of his partner, the other liquor merchant, and I have traced some of those. So all these families were also linked by marriage, but their caste remains. You don't go moving all over the place on marriage. Similarly, if you want to know does it still exist, in terms of who you arrange a marriage for and who you vote for, maybe election time, and those are the only areas you can see any vestiges of caste. The Jaffna idea of Samasana, Samaposhana, that they don't believe in that. Others have to sit in other places and we don't eat with them. That seems to have gone. I don't know, maybe you have examples it hasn't gone, but I think that kind of caste discrimination you don't find. But certainly if it comes to marriage, the issue may come up.
Dr. Kumari, coming back to the question of the rise of these various ethnic communities and the bourgeoisie, the Muslim or the Moor bourgeoisie came up, as many people know, through the trade.
Yeah.
But there is also this interesting aspect about anti-Muslim sentiments, which is quite popular today, but which had remained for quite some time in Sri Lankan society, especially in the 1915 time. My question is, what was the role of the bourgeoisie, especially of the Sinhala and the Tamil communities, in developing some sense of anti-Muslim sentiment in society? Because we know from various records and also from your book that, for example, D.S. Ananayaka, whom we come to celebrate in school, as the father of the nation and so on, was also someone who was involved in the 1915 riots, who was accused and taken into custody. We have the example of Ponnambalam Ramanathan and his famous or infamous speech of 1888 titled Ethnology of the Moors, where he suggests that the Moors were actually of Tamil ethnic origin. So there was some ideological support, some generation of feeling perhaps against the Muslim people at that time, and the bourgeoisie was perhaps involved. To what extent?
Well, when you say there's a tension and all that, you have to look to see how were people making their money. What was the general impression of the Sinhalese about other communities? And sometimes these impressions were totally exaggerated, and sometimes they were, they were not relevant to anything. But I have a feeling that it is not just Muslims. The Sinhala Buddhist, nationalist, chauvinist crowd, right through our history, has a record of hitting out at every minority. First were not the Muslims or in Tamils, first were the Christians. And in 1883, there's a big riot led by Migatuatte Gunananda and some bhikkhus in Kotahena against the Catholics. And there have been small riots like that in the Colombo North, where the target, the church. Then that was Dharmapala also contributed a lot to rousing that animosity, saying this is a foreign religion brought by the imperialists and these missionaries are corrupting our children in school and blah blah. The next round of Sinhala excitement on a minority came in 1915. Again, if you look, it began with a riot and a dispute with a Muslim tea shop merchant about the price, raising the price of the cup of tea. And the riots had already started. So these railway workers who were annoyed that the price of their cup of tea had gone up, attacked. When they attacked, then it spread. And the whole thing erupted in what looked like an anti-Muslim. The role of the Senanayakas would be that they were, from the word go, Sinhala nationalist. Whether they would incite people to riot, as the British and others said, there is no proof. They were arrested. They were arrested because they were the political, they had started speaking up politically. But to continue the Sinhala story, then by the 1930s, they picked on the Malayalis. That it was Ceylon for the Ceylonese, throw out the Malayali people who are not Ceylonese. And there was a huge, there were riots in Colombo and a big uproar where they were targeting the Malayalis who came from Kerala, known locally as Kochi, but also now they themselves call themselves Kochi because Cochin is regarded as one of the places they came from. But it's slightly derogatory when used by Sinhalese. The next round was the plantation workers in post-independence. That's another story of depriving a group of citizenship. And then by the time you come to the tail end of the century, you get the anti-Tamil feeling ending up in a civil war. So this has been there. And it keeps moving. It's fluid. Keeps moving. So to stop and think why today this community and not that community might need some very deep-seated investigations and research, because we don't know whether a small group of, like the group of monks, can hegemonize the whole thing by saying something and calling for people to boycott or attack. Then suddenly the whole country gets excited and boycott shops and all the rest of it, and then suddenly it goes. So I'm not sure that we should take all that much notice, because these are things that come and go, but we have to understand the nature of nationalism and leading to concern about your ethnicity, because once you make a pot of money, also you want to know, be known as belonging to a certain group in society, and then you start funding any groups which are Sinhala or Buddhist, as we have seen, I mentioned many. So, you know, it's an interesting story where it's all wound up by calling people names like they are mainly traders and they are exploiters and they are something, and then it goes. So one wonders maybe Christians are the next. We come round in a circle. Watch out, Christians.
Finally, the final theme perhaps that we can discuss here is the theme of gender. My simple basic question is, what was the impact of capitalism and the rise of the bourgeoisie on gender relations? What were the changes that took place in the bourgeois women and the way in which they acted and reacted to the developments that were going on at that time.
Yeah. Quite interestingly, I have also dealt with another group whom I call modernizers, as the Burghers and Eurasians, who did not feel that they were a part of Sinhala or Tamil or Muslim society, but they had their own identity. And they were, when everybody else is talking identity in the latter part of the 20th century, Burghers also started getting concerned with their identity. Are they of Dutch descent or Portuguese, and which is higher, and who can join the Dutch Burgher Union, and there are a lot of things going on. But nevertheless, they led the field in the modernizing. I was telling some friends earlier, in the case of my father, who came from a village, coastal village in the Gaul district, when he was put to school in Mahinda, he was put into a burgher household so that he could learn Western manners, habits, speech, everything. It was quite a common phenomenon, evidently, that you accepted that they were modernizers, and you did your best to also modernize. Now, the burgher women were also pioneers. They were the first nurses, midwives, and doctors. And very interestingly, all the first 10 women doctors in Sri Lanka were burghers. And this had a great impact on Sinhalese, who just started saying, why can't our girls go to medical college and become doctors? So I would stress that factor too, that every minority may have had some impact coming from the group of burghers who were living in Sri Lanka.
Dr. Kumari, 1.5 decades after the publication of your book, of course there are no copies available now, but you are coming out with a new edition very soon. How has been the response? Was it something that you expected, unexpected? Has there been a difference in the manner in which various ethnic communities or families sort of?
Yeah, families will always grumble. But when I got the book out, I only published a few hundred. I thought, this is a boring book. This is a book for special fourth-year students doing economic history or something. Nobody else is interested in all this detail of who sold firewood to whose grandmother did that, and nobody is interested. So just publish a few, and then that's your task is over. To Michael Roberts, I have done my duty. This book started selling, maybe for the wrong reason, that a lot of people were very curious as to the other families. How did those dioceses make money? But because in every case, those fellows who made money were from very humble origin, as the phrase goes. None of them came from some posh background and went into liquor. They were the people who were Tuttudage taking a cart up country and selling a few things and coming back. So it's amazing how people wanted to know, and they were happy to know that that family also humble origin. Now, the other thing that happened was people wanted to know who's related to who, because the book also comes into politics, and the UNP was known at that time as uncle-nephew party. Now, how did that word come? There was a family articular who came from very humble beginning. He was selling something in a boutique, and they said Nidane Akambuna, and I don't know, some story. But somehow he hit gold with a mining, and he became one of the very wealthy articular family, 3 daughters. So he was so much in demand as a father-in-law that the 3 main political families of Sri Lanka, one daughter married Senanayaka family,